Hey, I'm Kate, and let's talk about how fostering changed my life. I want to share this story, how fostering truly transformed me, because I still get a lot of questions from people who find some of my older content when I was a foster parent. A lot of the questions I get are, how is this going to affect my biological kids? How is it going to affect my family? How will I manage it? I want to help, but it seems overwhelming. So I just thought I would share with you how fostering changed my life in so many ways. Number one, my heart grew. Learning to love children that were not biologically mine. I learned that when God places a child in your home, some are easier to love than others. But I saw each of those kids as unique image bearers of God, and it helped me to push past the trauma behaviors that I might have been dealing with a particular child. Trauma parenting can be difficult, but it challenged me to improve my own capability and have a better understanding on how to love these kids. Fostering really helped me understand unconditional love. Some of those kids loved me right back, some of those kids pushed our love away, and some of those kids were hard to love. That was true then, and it remains true now in the work that I do now. But it was a really great reminder for me that even when I screw up and I'm struggling, God loves me unconditionally, and I can love these kids unconditionally. God loves me, and I can always go to Him for that love, so it helped me be a safe place for those kids to come to me for that same sort of love. Some cases, it's really easy to love the kids. It is hard not to have somebody in a vulnerable situation who so desperately needs help. It is hard not to love them. But as time goes on, there's this honeymoon phase they talk about in fostering, as in adoption even. As time goes on, the trauma response will rear its ugly head, and sometimes it can become very difficult. I had two brothers that near the end of their time with us, it became very, very difficult because of the way that they were reacting and pushing out and hurting my biological kids. It became very hard for them. But I could see in their vulnerability and in their weakness the ugliness of the trauma response that they were having, and it allowed me to love them unconditionally even when it was hard. It taught me how to love them better. It taught me to increase my capacity. It taught me to learn why they were having these responses in the first place. And learning about trauma parenting has only helped me in all of my relationships in life and just given me a different perspective to see people differently. Another way it changed my life is trusting God even when it hurts. This got easier and harder all at the same time. I always felt like there was like one string that wasn't attached. It was almost like a protection mechanism for my heart because I knew I was eventually going to have to say goodbye to this child that I love so much. Especially with our last little guy who was with us from birth to 14 months, who really had no visits until it was time to transfer him to kin. That goodbye hurt a lot. I think about him all the time. We still have pictures of him around our home. We still have, I'm getting emotional just talking about him. We still have his little footprint on an ornament on our tree that we put up every year. I knew that when I started fostering, God called me into a love that was going to hurt, but it taught me so much. Whenever we choose to love, we have the capacity to hurt. Even in our marriages, our friendships, our relationships with our biological kids. I'm going to read you that famous Winnie the Pooh quote. I think about it all the time. How lucky am I to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard? I think about that quote over and over. Even though it hurt over and over to say goodbye to kids that I grew to love so much because I cared for them as my own child, it hurts to this day to think about where some of those kids ended up. I truly count it as a blessing that I got to love them and be a part of their story. It also reminds me of a Jason Johnson quote. If you don't know who Jason Johnson is in the foster care world, he is, I think, a former pastor, but he's a speaker on foster care and adoption. He has a couple of books to help motivate the church to respond to the need of foster care and adoption. And he says something that's always stuck with me. As Christ followers, we are designed to move towards and not away from the brokenness. Christ came for us and our brokenness, and we can do the same for others. I truly think fostering is some of the most meaningful work I've ever done, and it prepared me for what God has called me into beyond that. Another way it changed my life is my compassion grew. Seeing the world through the eyes of a child in crisis. Gosh, there is so much that I could say about this. Fostering changed my perspective on so many things. How I saw kids' behavior, how I viewed and dealt with the biological family. Fostering taught me so much compassion and empathy. And I have a video here on empathy, but I like to share this. I'd like to share this again. I know I said it in that video, but sympathy is feeling bad for somebody or somebody's situation. Sympathy is like being at the top of the ladder and somebody is in the pit, and then you throw down some food to them or you throw down a blanket to keep them warm. You feel bad for them, so you want to help them. Empathy is crawling down into that pit with them, helping and serving them so that you can both crawl out together. And developing empathy was a really powerful tool for me in my personal life and in the work that God has called me to do now. My compassion grew in understanding generational trauma and the struggles that birth families were dealing with, and breaking generational cycles. Generational cycles were broken in my own family. with me choosing to follow the Lord. And I had no major trauma. I had a great childhood. When you start to understand some of the trauma that these birth parents have gone through, you're kind of like, wow, no wonder you have walked a path I have no idea about. No wonder you are behaving in the way you are. No wonder you can't parent healthily. I always say those of us with a little less cracks can help those with a few more cracks. We are all broken. We live in a broken, fallen world. But some of the cracks on some people are deep and they don't have a support system to catch them when they fall. Fostering just really opened my eyes to that reality. Which brings me into my next point, learning to love people where they are, not where you wish they would be. This is something I still struggle with in my work now. You cannot change people who don't want to change. I love to help people, but I have discovered something about myself. My motivation to help people is because I want to see positive change in their lives. The motivation for my husband, for example, to help people is just because he loves people. My motivation is because I want to see change. But I have realized it is not my job to change them, but I can still love them right where they're at. With healthy boundaries and persistence, I can love them right where they're at. With some days being much harder than others, I can still love them right where they're at. This has served me well in all facets of life. Another way fostering changed my life, and I briefly mentioned this already, but my understanding of others grew. I have dived into trauma parenting training. I have dived into therapy, EBT, CBT, counseling, you name it. And I feel like I can grieve better, if that's even a thing. Some may view me as strong or unemotional or even hard, but I know that God has gifted me with a great gift of resilience so that others can rely on me. I have seen how resilience builds in others due to what they have gone through maybe in their own childhood. I have just experienced so many lessons in trauma, in resilience, and in grief. Another way that fostering changed my life is realizing that every child is different and there is no one way to parent. Gosh, there is no one way to parent my biological children, and certainly not with kids in foster care or kids that have been adopted. Every single one of us is unique, and it always brings me back to a place of awe in how God created us that way. Even in trauma parenting, you may learn a new technique and you think, okay, I did X with Y child, so I can do X with Z child. Well, that doesn't always work, which brings me back to one of the points I mentioned earlier, loving people where they're at. Our first calling, I think, as foster parents is just to love. And as Christians, our calling is to love. I just recently read a book from Bob Goff, Everybody Always, and he talks about this concept of becoming love. As we grow in maturity in Christ, we are becoming love. As the Lord puts us in different situations and different experiences, we have the ability to become love. I just love how that's phrased. It is a reminder to me, not just to try and fix people or fix things, but to just love people. Like I said earlier, my nature so evidently is just like, I want to fix something. I see a problem, I want to fix it. I'm a problem solver, but it has taught me just to love. Another thing fostering changed about my life is just opening my eyes to hidden struggles around me. I look at everything different now. Promiscuous behavior, social media, family dynamics. Gosh, everybody struggles. So how do we as Christ followers step into those struggles and shine the light of Christ? A practical way that fostering changed my life is my organization capacity grew. Managing schedules, visitations, caseworker visits, family visit, meetings, court dates, all of these things. My practical organization grew. And I've applied it to every area of my life. Later in life, now that I am approaching 40s, I'm actually quite obsessed with organization and productivity. It's kind of weird, actually, if I think about it, how fostering developed my organization and management side of things. Another way fostering changed my life is figuring out how to balance the needs of my biological children, foster children, and adopted children. This continues to be a big one. Our adopted daughter has very different needs, and I often have to explain to my biological kids why we have to do things differently for her. Part of the reason we closed our home to foster care was to protect her heart. We didn't want to expose her to more goodbyes and the trauma of that. Just wanted her to know she is stable in our family. She's not going anywhere and she is secure. And she says the sweetest things about our family, but there's a part of her as an adoptee identity that is always going to wonder about her first family. And I don't share her story as far as contact or, if she does or doesn't have contact with her biological family, but fostering her and then adopting her just changed how I viewed even continuing to be a foster parent. I wanted her to not have to experience any more loss. Fostering also really helped me to develop systems and prevent burnout and stay emotionally present. Learning the importance of self-care and not pouring from an empty cup was really magnified through my fostering process. I hear so many sad stories of burnout and breakdown. Boundaries, soul care, and community are so important. You need that to step into broken situations. So fostering magnified tried that for my own life. And even when I see myself slipping in the self-care, I need to like pull myself back and say, okay, if you don't take care of yourself first, you're not going to take care of everything else and everybody else well. Another way is my willingness and obedience to the Lord grew. I will never forget when I thought we were losing Rosie. I was actually headed to a foster care conference. I can't remember if it was my first foster care conference. I think it might have been, but I was heading there and I went into the courtroom expecting that parental rights were going to be terminated and the adoption process would then from there officially start. We had already been approved for our home study. We were already approved from the agency as her adoptive family. And I'm not going to get into the whole story, but we walked into court and a complete curveball was thrown. And I walked out of that court more upset than I've ever been in my life, completely sobbing and shaken to my core that we were going to be losing this little girl who at that point we had loved for, I believe, 15 months. I remember going to this conference completely devastated, and that song, "Take Courage, My Heart, Stay Steadfast, My Soul," which is making me emotional just talking about it. He's in the waiting. I didn't know what was going to be the end of our story together. Were we going to lose her? In that moment, I really felt like we were going to lose her. And God just so clearly taught me about surrender. And I'll never forget, I remember filming a video and just talking through the feelings. And I was just felt this overcoming peace from the Lord. Like, He's got her. He loves her more than I ever could. And I just had to let go and surrender to her in that moment and trust that no matter what the end of the story was going to be, that it was the right story for her because He loves her more than I ever could. And I'll never forget the joy when the decision changed back to us being her adoptive family, that overwhelming joy. God gave her back to us after we thought we were going to lose her. Trusting God when the path seemed so uncertain was difficult, but He taught me so much about obedience and just following Him and surrender. And when obedience and saying yes to her leads to blessings beyond imagine. She's almost 8 and I just cannot imagine our life without her. She is just an absolute joy and light of our world. We love her so, so much. And I'm just so thankful I get to be her mom. Which brings me to the next point. What I learned about fostering is our family can grow that way. Our journey from fostering to adoption, I know that some people say they hate the term foster to adopt. And in some ways I agree with this. If you want to adopt only, I don't think foster care is your best route. The goal in foster care should never be that you hope the biological family fails so that you can adopt the child. That is not a good intention. That is not a good heart behind fostering. But for us, foster to adopt meant we are fostering with the option of a forever yes at the end, if the child was going to need that. Fostering to us meant a yes to however long in whatever capacity that child would need, which only 1 out of the 10 little loves that we fostered ended up needing. Our family has been forever changed. We have the most energetic, bubbly, loving little girl. She loves big, she loves to cuddle, she loves her family fiercely, and we love her even more. God was so faithful in what He taught me through our fostering experience and what I learned from each of those children. Every single one of those kids taught me something, and some of those stories we are still involved in, some we've lost contact. But being a part of so many family stories is a privilege that I will forever be grateful for. I want to encourage you, if you are considering foster care, that it will be one of the best things you ever do with your life. No matter how difficult, some days are going to be difficult. I'm not going to lie and sugarcoat things. Foster care is difficult. You are stepping into uncharted waters, into broken territory. But I want to encourage you, it truly will be the best thing you ever do. I know it certainly was for me. Build your village. And remember, you have to be a villager to build a village. You have to be that for somebody else. And that one very practical way is stepping into a foster care situation. You're a village for that family. But build your village within your own community to help you foster. Get trauma trained. Figure out self-care and soul care. And remember to take time for pauses and breaks and for refreshment. Remember, fostering is saying yes to love even when it's hard. I have been working on a trauma parenting course for the last little while, and this is just everything that I have learned in my own journey, packaged beautifully and put into a course that will be really helpful for you. It comes with emotional regulation tools for kids. It comes with a little workbook and cheat sheets, because getting trauma trained, there's a lot of information that you need to learn. Getting trauma trained has been absolutely vital in our journey, and I feel like agencies give you kind of the bare minimum. As you go on, the more you know about it, the more equipped you will. I will leave that link below. It'll be launching soon if you're interested in that. Even though I don't talk a ton about fostering and adoption anymore on this channel, I still want to create resources for you to help you in that journey. I know how difficult it can be. I want to support and encourage you in saying that difficult yes. So I will leave all that information linked down below. Someday days, I miss fostering so very much. I have still fostered since closing our license in official capacity, more with teen moms and things like that, but everybody needs somebody to love them. And I think the more people that love a child, the better off that they will be. So no matter what your situation, no matter how difficult it is, rely on the Lord's strength to help you. But if you feel the Lord is calling you into it, say yes. Say yes. It'll be forever worth it. You will be forever changed in all the best ways. Thank you so much for watching this video today. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.